Hey, I thought I would try some different accents today, and I'm thinking really American accent because I hate my own accent. It's fairly horrible. Bit of background: I'm born in the Manchester area of England, uh, by far the nearest city. I don't think I have a Mancunian accent, not in the typical sort of rough, angry sort of way. So I don't have that, and I'm not a Gallagher. And as such, my accent is, I feel, hard to place. But it's a nasty accent anyway. It probably sounds quite northern, but perhaps not a sort of common accent. Certainly, very frustrating when I'm talking in my own language. I'm speaking English around the table. We're having an educated discussion. Everything's going quite well, and then the dreaded sorry, what was that? And they don't have a clue what I'm talking about, and it's my muddy, horrible accent. Further background: my parents are originally from the Midlands, an accent all of its own. There are various, of course. England is littered with a whole conundrum of various accents. The Americans are familiar with maybe three, and it really riles me, to be honest. Really does. Very frustrating. Um, and then my parents moved down south to London. Accents may change during this process, and then finally, I'm born up north. And of course, as a child, you listen to your parents, you listen to the people around you, and it all sort of mixes together, and you learn words in school, and you recite them. And in theory, if everybody stays in the same place, learns in the same place, leaves school similarly, and then doesn't move around, that's why we have accents and we categorise them as such, because that accent is from that place and that's where that person's from. But because I've got a slightly different background to the usual Mancunian, who's possibly born in Salford, and that's where they. For example, Paul Scholes has the worst accent I've ever heard. He's a horrible man. However, and I say he's horrible because he once refused to sign my dad's autograph, so screw him. Also, he's a Man United player, or was. But be that as it may, I'm getting vastly off topic, but a Mancunian accent isn't very desirable. I can name a couple. Terry Christian, for example, has what I would consider the quintessential Mancunian accent. It's incredibly heavy, and he's very loud and proud about it. And I quite like that, but I'm not envious. I wouldn't like that accent for myself. So go check Terry Christian out for a Mancunian accent. But I'm sort of I'm interested by accents. I hate it when I'm watching any kind of let's say panel show. I'm watching QI. I'm watching Mock the Week. I'm watching Have I Got News For You. Those kind of programs, and they say stuff like, "Ooh, that guy. What the hell's he doing? What a regional accent he has." Accents, by their definition, are regional. No one has a neutral accent. It's just the closest thing to the Queen's English, but that's a whole other thing. In the future, I would like to see greater exposure of different accents to the world, really, because I hate being misunderstood, and I feel that my diction is reasonable. I feel that my voice isn't that boring. I mean, I do this video and I get decent feedback, so yeah, what I'm hoping for is more exposure to accents, especially to Americans, and also I'm studying Japanese in Japan right now on exchange, and in class the other day it just boiled me. The following boiled me up because the conversation was thus: I was not particularly understood with my stupid accent, and then it came to the discussion of Well, we learn English via American textbooks with American audio tapes. Exercise one. And they learn it that way, and through Hollywood and American TV shows, and they're overwhelmed. So I'm back then. Turns out my camera's full of memory, so I've deleted something, and we're back. Now, as I was saying, I don't want to just have a hint of an American accent. I don't want to. Yeah, I want the full blown, hardcore awesomeness of America. So. And yeah, I'm not naive. I think there are many, many, many different accents in America itself. It's a big place. It's a huge, huge place. It's its own bloody continent, practically. Across 3 different time zones, they don't all sound the same. And just as, hey, that guy has a very British accent, annoys me. Because there's no such thing as a British accent. It takes me off. For me to say American accent is not really good enough. I don't. My favourite American accent. I quite like a sort of small town southern, drawn out maybe, or I'm not sure about the hard sort of Boston sounding accent. I'm not sure. Possibly sort of California might be the best bet, at least to start with. It's very difficult. How do you go about it without actually living in America with Americans all the time? And if you're not in America, I mean, maybe because I'm not in England anymore, and I haven't been for the last couple of months, maybe I'm losing some of my original accent. I don't feel that this is the case, but maybe it is. And so, with that in mind, I'm thinking if I do develop some kind of American accent somehow and defy the odds, if I had an American accent, how would I sustain this American accent? It feels like right now, if I wanted to put on an American accent of sorts, if I wanted to go that way, then I might just end up sounding like I'm doing impressions permanently, and I don't want that at all. But maybe that's how it starts. Maybe you start with a phrase in American, you start playing around with sounds and words and stuff, and you maybe get a little close to what you're looking for. So, yeah, maybe you start with a line, you start with a quote, you start with maybe an impression of a famous American. So let's say you start with Harrison Ford. You sort of start with Harrison Ford. Actually, that was a bad impression of Harrison Ford. But you start with something, a quote. You start with maybe a song lyric, for example, that sounds particularly American, and then work from there. Get in that mode. But it of course takes. I have a lot of practice, and with that, maybe do less, maybe do less English, deliberately change it. But is it also irreversible? Do you get into a state where you a sort of halfway house where your American accent isn't all that, and it doesn't go down that well? And maybe once I'm back in England, because people react and respond to, particularly the American accent, I imagine, in different ways. Some people are very patriotic in England, and they might not be so fond of it really. For example, applying for a job, I don't know, and then the embarrassment might, I say embarrassment, but it might a situation might arise where maybe I'm good at an American accent, maybe I can pull off this whole thing, but maybe I'm cold on it, and people say, "Oh, you're American then," and then I've then got to explain, actually I'm not. I have no American relatives. I've never been in America for more than about a month cumulatively. Spent 4 weeks of my life in America, so I have no grounds to have an American accent, and that might disappoint people. That's a lie. I make up a big backstory, which I have done in the past, actually, when drunk, which worked quite well. I suppose you could always say, yeah, I was born there, I moved. No, I don't know. So until I have a green card, which is impossible to get as an Englishman, without £1,000,000 at least, and relatives, and without marrying into America, etc., 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 until I'm an American, which seems a long, long way off at the moment, until I'm incredibly famous, etc., I'll work on an accent, and that'll be that. It's very tough. I would maybe I have to become famous, and then my accent is worldwide acknowledged and understood. Maybe that's the case. Definitely American is my target, though. I met some Australians here. Likewise, excellent. Wouldn't mind living in Australia for the rest of my life either. Yeah, I don't want to spend the rest of my life in England. I think that's one thing that travelling does. They say it broadens the mind, but it does more than that. It makes you feel like the world is so big that staying within the same city, let alone the same house, is just a complete waste, frankly. There's so much of the world to see and do and explore and learn. And if you just stay in England forever, then it's just not very good. And so I've moved on in that respect. And thinking Australian accent, oh no, it's difficult to pull off an Australian accent. I've never been beyond the. This is it. Accents have their own stereotypes, so I'm not going to mention barbecues. But that's possibly where you start with an Australian accent. I don't know. I'm sure there are classes on it. I'm sure you could get audio tapes learning English. I've actually considered this in the past. I've considered exploring the option of a language sort of beginner's English pack, and then via an audio tape or something, and possibly textbook, relearning English but in the American way. That might be an interesting option. Probably expensive, probably worthwhile. Useless, I don't know. But yeah, certainly something that I want to do in the near future. So, kind of works better at a lower register and a lower tone. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it probably sounds like I'm mocking Americans right now. I don't know. But yeah, working on it. It should be good. I doubt that's the thing, I doubt anyone seriously considers the idea of learning English in the same way. But, they start somewhere. I mean, actors have to learn different actors for roles in movies, so. In the past, we've seen it go well. Leonardo DiCaprio got a lot of stick for doing an arguably poor South African accent in the film Blood Diamond. Now, I thought it was okay. It's very ambitious, it's difficult. But he did it, and actors like that have to a large extent, learn these accents, presumably from scratch, and have a relatively short time frame to work within, so they must have voice coaches and stuff. So yeah, I'll get a voice coach. That's what I'll do. Apparently, for really Southern American sort of, and I don't mean the continent South America, I mean down in the South, you restrain your tongue to the bottom of your mouth, and then sort of barely open your mouth and sort of talk a little like this. Draw each word out, and maybe you can have a good time with it. I don't really know. But again, I'm sort of borderline Forrest Gump again, so it's difficult to work. So that's my plan then. maybe that's it. When I'm not doing this stupid Japanese, when I'm not doing that outside of classes, I can experiment with different accents and get away from English. And perhaps by the time I return home in sort of August time next year, I'll have completely lost my accent because I'm not in Manchester anymore. I'm not in England anymore. It's an accent I want to desert. Now, in my mind, of course, and this is the difference, when each person hears themselves talk, you hear... I don't know quite how it works, to be honest, but whenever you talk, you think you sound normal. But then you hear yourself on a video, audio tape, you listen to yourself back and you think, that does not sound like me. Oh, maybe it does, but then you think, God, I sound terrible, I'm really embarrassed, I can't bear to hear myself, which was at least the case for me for a long time. I'll get used to it, but it is very different from what I'm hearing right now. I think I sound brilliant, but then I hear myself back and I hate it, so... I don't know, it's tough to change, but change is possibly fun, and I'm losing nothing by dropping my original accent. Good. So that's my plan. American accent. Again, I'm calling it an American accent. I'll decide on a kind of accent that I want. I've mostly in the past met Americans from the East Coast, so they're from sort of Virginia or up in the Boston area. So yeah, that's probably where I'd like to. That's probably where I'd like to live long term as well in America. So maybe that's the best way to go. But then if you do that, if you learn accents at all, I don't think I would be leaving behind a particularly great accent. However, it is kind of part of one's identity, so there is possibly a bit of betrayal in there. And maybe it's nice to be a novelty. For example, if I'm actually living in America full time, then maybe I actually want to sound more English. Maybe I want to have more of a Hugh Grant accent. I don't know. That might be more appealing than some sort of rip-off, kind of American, kind of weird, and it just doesn't go down that well. So I don't know. Maybe I'll play up to my Englishness. It's a tough one to figure out. I think you go down either road though, whereas mine's just a muddy, horrible, uncompromising, ridiculously difficult to understand accent. So either I go down the fully blown English accent, universally recognised, albeit not the most glamorous accent, perhaps. Yeah, Hugh Grant's always the stammering idiot, imbecile sort of joke, really, with this stupidly faux posh, I don't know quite how to describe it, but not great. But it seems if you want to roll in Hollywood, then that's what you'd have to go for. Personally, summing things up, happy to leave my old accent behind, happy to have a new one, but obviously it takes time and I'm nowhere. But all I've got to do is learn some different terminology, expand, get a line, and explore. But we'll see how it goes. The danger, of course, is learning a bit of Boston accent, and then a bit more Texan, and then I'm all over the place, which just sounds like a mess. Difficult. Interesting though. Interesting stuff. So I'll leave you with that. This video's gone on far too long, but just what I think about voices and accents and stuff. Maybe the funniest voice is... I'm not sure. But accents all have a purpose, but the thing is as well, my accent isn't even normal where I'm from. So I don't even fit in where I'm from. Not that I'd necessarily want to, but I don't, so there isn't an issue with that. So cool, I'll leave you with that. Thanks for watching my hugely drawn out video. I may edit it and cut a few things down, but it's looking like a rather long affair. Thanks for sticking with it. I'll maybe update you as well. We'll see how it goes. cool. Comment, etc. All merrier. Brilliant. Let's rock on. That was a terrible way to end the video. I'll edit that out. And if I don't, thanks for watching. I'll see you around.